Minister, thank you very much for talking to us this evening. Tell us, what are we doing here today, and what do you expect to see as a result of this evening?
Well, this is part of a process of putting together a strategic development plan for the sport horse sector in Ireland. We have really talented people who are very passionate about horses in this sector. There's probably 12 to 13,000 people working in the sport horse sector in Ireland. There's about 50,000 people involved in it broadly. We probably have about 120,000 horses in this sector. And the turnover of the sector is worth 600 to 700 million euros a year to the economy. So this is a big sector. Some of the difficulties in terms of getting to where it needs to get to as regards standards and performance and potential is that there is no big vision and no big plan for the sector as a whole. Unlike what we have in lots of other sectors across the agriculture and agri-food sector. So we know exactly where we're at on dairy. We are going to produce 50% more milk in volume terms by 2020, and we're going to get 40% extra added value from that volume. We know exactly what we want to do on beef. I think the racehorse sector has a pretty good idea of where it's going and what it wants to do. It's well resourced, there's a lot of focus there. But I think the sport horse sector, because it's very diverse, it spreads from traditional horse breeds like Connemara ponies and Irish Draft to high-end show jumpers, where we're trying to bring in warm bloods, mixing them with our own breeds to try and get good performance, and it's only partially worked, to eventing success, which has been a great success in Ireland. And I think what's needed now is a plan that the entire industry buy into, so that there's a focus, we know where we want to get to, and that linked to that plan, then there are specific actions around how do we manage a stud book properly, how do we get the information we need from people who are breeding horses so that we can put a data bank together around breeding programs so that people who want to improve their breeding performance have the access to the information to do that. How do we end the crazy situation where half of the people who are registering foals are registering on a white book and the other half are on a green book, so only half the people are actually giving full breeding pedigree information around how their foals have been produced and under what progeny. So that must end, right? And we need to find a way of doing that isn't costly for people or overly hassle driven for people. And we'll do that. We need, for example, to learn from other sectors around, for example, a discussion groups model. There are 7,000 dairy farmers that meet every month in a discussion group format to discuss how their businesses are being run, how they can learn from each other in terms of best practice, listening to their peers. Inviting in experts to talk about, genomics technology around breeding, sexed semen technology around breeding, getting better feed conversion efficiency for their animals to produce more milk with less inputs. These are the kind of conversations that we should be having for horse breeders as well. We should be bringing horse breeders together. Not necessarily on a monthly basis, but perhaps on a quarterly basis. We need to tailor a discussion groups model for this sector so that when people are breeding, they're actually breeding with a purpose in mind, with a target market in mind, so that they know what they're getting. We need to take as much of the guesswork out of breeding as we can, giving them the data and the access to the information that they need to do that, as opposed to just breeding and then hoping that the outcome will be an exciting one. So there are a lot of learnings that we can take from other sectors, whether it's dairy, whether it's beef, whether it's racehorses, and we need to look at best practice, and then we need to tailor a plan for the sport horse industry that suits this sector. And what tonight is about is getting feedback from stakeholders as to what they think we need to be doing.
And you mentioned the thoroughbred sector, so the likes of Irish thoroughbred marketing, do you think they could play a role after their success in marketing the thoroughbred horse worldwide in the horse sport sector?
Well, I think their focus is very much on thoroughbreds. They are very different sectors. Horse racing and sports horses are very different sector, and in some cases attract very different people. But I certainly think we need to learn the lessons from ITM. And their successes, and we need to understand how we can replicate that type of structure in a way that will really work for the sports horse sector. So there are markets out there that want to buy Irish horses, that are currently buying a lot of Irish thoroughbreds, but aren't buying very many sports horses because they don't necessarily understand the market, they don't have the information, the quality and where to look and so on. And we can address that. And we need to address that so that we can create an export market for this sector in the same way that we have a huge market for thoroughbreds that we export at the moment. And that isn't just a market, by the way, for high-end show jumpers, right? It's also a market for leisure horses, for certain types of pony breeds, for certain types of equine tourism projects that may be outside of Ireland, that may want a certain temperament and a certain type of horse, and we can produce that for them. But we need to create a reputation as a country that is producing high quality horses for whatever market we're targeting in terms of what we're breeding for, so that we have a focus and we know what we're aiming at, as opposed to the hit and hope methods that have been there amongst some breeders in the past. And I don't want to be patronizing about this, because we have some really good breeders in Ireland, and we have some people who are very, very good at what they do. But we also have, and have had in particular during the boom years, a lot of very mediocre breeding, which was more about volume than about quality, because everybody was buying horses and everybody was breeding horses because the market was so strong. That's over now. So we need to reduce the numbers, and we need to be much more targeted in terms of how we breed and when we breed and for what market we're breeding for, to ensure that every animal, if possible, that we produce actually has a market. That's another way of dealing with the welfare issue and the oversupply of horses that is causing problems in Ireland at the moment as well.
And you've brought together Teagasc, the RDS and Horse Sport Ireland. Are they the team to bring this forward, and are they working well together so far?
Well, they're certainly trying, and I think their efforts are worth supporting. They're very good people. They're very sincere about wanting to put a comprehensive plan together, and I think they are the right people to do it, but they need to listen to others too. And that's what tonight is about. That's what the other meetings that we'll have around the country are about. I'll go to as many of them as I can. But it is important, because this sector has a lot of very passionate people in it, and they want to be part of future planning and future solutions, and we need to listen to them and take on board their ideas, within reason, obviously, and I think that's what this process is about. And I think there is a genuine appetite to listen to stakeholders and try and take on board their views and opinions, because there is a pool of knowledge available in this room and across Ireland in the sports horse sector that is hugely valuable, and we need to harness that.
And finally, just there's some mention this evening, and you mentioned it yourself in your address to the group here this evening, in the economics of this, that maybe some more money is required to try and market the sport horse in Ireland, and there's a possible imbalance between the thoroughbred horse and sport horse. Do you see that as being part of the solution going forward?
Well, I mean, an awful lot of the money in the thoroughbred racing sector goes into prize money to maintain, an international standard in Ireland that would otherwise be lost if that prize money wasn't available. And if the races don't happen in Ireland, the industry falls apart. The sports horse sector is very different. But yes, we do need to figure out how we finance this industry. But let's get the fundamentals right first. Let's get breeding programs that are producing top quality horses, so that we have something of real quality to market before we worry about pumping money into marketing something. So the product has to be first class, and then we need to get value for money from marketing that quality, and I think we can do that. But I think the fundamentals need to be right first and foremost, and then let's worry about how we finance the marketing of that product once it's being delivered.